Well, good morning, guys. Welcome to another episode of Heart of the City, the City Barbers podcast. As always, we're in the barber shop. Before we talk about what we're doing, Casey, hit that intro. Well, guys, welcome back. Especially with us three here, what I want to start with, I'm going to go more or less to you and I, John, first. You know, you're basically, 9 years deep in the barber industry, all 9 years here. I'm on my way to 7, again, all here as well. John, to you first, what are some key things that give you a 9-year career in this industry? Like, what does it take? You're 9 years deep is not nothing. Same place, ultimately same job. You're starting out a new industry, and you're still here. What's some key things that you can put some highlight on the way you think this is what it takes to be 10 years deep, basically?
Well, I guess personally it was I'm a very stubborn dude when I want to be, and it was a lot of people telling me that it wasn't ever going to work. So a lot of that is proving everyone wrong and kind of feeling like you have that chip on your shoulder. But to make it, or at least what I feel and what I believe, to make it stick that long is you have to actually nurture that passion for the people, what you do. For me, this is my creative outlet. So after art school, I picked this up, and I actually haven't drawn since art school. So this is how I release that creative juice. And so every day it's just something new. It keeps me going, and that's what keeps me driving forward is that creativity.
Did you know getting into the industry that it was going to quench that creative side of you? Because obviously I know a little bit about your past, going into more art, and I would imagine you were doing that a lot more as a kid. That was at least an interest that you're going into. Yeah, did you ever think that being a barber would actually quench that? No,
not at all. Which has been probably one of the most surprising things about it. Because it's very much like sculptures where you have just this piece of stone, you have this hair, and you just have to take away what doesn't belong there to create what you want. And then you add in the client aspect of it, which is always going to be a wild card because not everyone's going to love what you do or actually appreciate it for what it is, or someone's just going to want a 3 on the back and sides and a little up top. So the creativity is what keeps me pushing forward and sticking with it.
Yeah, I think that's like an underlying kind of nuance of this skill, of this craft, is just to your point. I think it's the same way. It's very much like sculpting. It's you have the big block of stone and you're whittling away and creating that shape with what you're doing. Especially with how, we all know how we cut and our focus on listening to do what the hair wants to do, listening to the growth pattern, head shape. We're really building a shape around their head shape. So the sculpting has always been something that resonated deep with me. It's similar. I wouldn't say the art and being creative. I think art specifically was not my biggest pull when I was younger. I like a lot of us. I enjoyed coloring. I enjoyed certain things. I would trace. I was like that kid that you had that light table where you could put an image on top of it and trace it. I wanted to be good at drawing, but I had to trace it. If you just draw me something out of your own head, my mind would go blank, and I couldn't just draw something like that. It was really hard for me to be artistry like that. But when it came to other sets of creative space, simple things were clothes. I was the 7-year-old kid that enjoyed my dressing, and it wasn't like costumes. I wasn't into that whatsoever, but just kind of like an intent with my clothes. I was the kid that would rearrange my room every month type of thing so I could just get a new feel, a new look to it all. I always had that type of creative space for it. But I'm with you. This is one of those surprises is how creative every single person really is on all of this.
Yeah.
Okay, what else? 10 years deep.
I mean, you got to be a little bit of a glutton for punishment. because the first while when you're in this industry, it is a crapshoot. And it's just, you show up to work, you do 0 haircuts, and you're like, cool, whatever I did that day didn't work. So now I got to come back to work. I got to work twice as hard just to get one person in my chair. And so you just have to be willing to essentially put yourself out there, be bold, and meet a bunch of different people. Which if you're an introvert, goes against everything. So you just have to be willing to take that step and essentially put yourself out there, try new things, get kicked out of buildings. Who knows?
I think exactly to that point, these were maybe 2 specific words that were resonating with me was dedication and resilience. The first part, I think you got to be dedicated to the process of being a barber, which isn't always obvious or easy to know what that process looks like. But if you got more senior people that you can be around or other mentors in the industry that you can be around, but the actual industry, it's absolutely a process. You don't get your license and you're just ready to rumble, picking your own schedule, making 6 figures, doing whatever you want to do. The dream that the industry kind of sells, that does not happen day one whatsoever. And you kind of get hit in the face pretty fast. First off, finding a barbershop that is actually good enough that you want to be around, that you can see a future with, that you can stick with for a few years. You got to get a job first. Just because you have a license doesn't mean you're just going to be working in the barbershop you want to be working at. Like, you could always fall back on, the franchises out there and cut hair, sure. But, like, if you really want to be in, reputable barbershop in your community, it doesn't just happen just because you got your license. So you got to, get that first.
Yeah, and to that point, just showing up to the barbershop doesn't mean walk-ins are going to come in and find you either.
Not at all. It's one, I don't think it matters where you're at, what shop you're in, what level of service or, haircut you're giving. It takes time to build a clientele. And just because you do get walk-ins doesn't guarantee that now, okay, this is my client now, they're just going to be with me every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks. You got to accomplish to a high level that person in your chair for them to even return. I think it's with anybody, but maybe, men specifically, if you don't absolutely connect with that person cutting your hair, the very next haircut, you're going somewhere else, you're getting somewhere new. You got to really resonate with somebody if they're going to keep on going with you, let alone sit with you for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So even just getting those walk-ins are one thing, but to be able to execute that, it takes time and certain cycles to get people to actually become a client. So I think the dedication to that process, and there's good days, even when you are, starting out, especially certain, depends on your schedule, but, weekends and evenings, but, holiday season, even if you don't have any clients, holiday season everywhere just goes an extra uptick in the service industry. So you can still have good, great days when you are newer, but you're absolutely going to have those valleys. You're going to have a day where no one's on your books and you're waiting for those walk-ins 100%. Or you leave that day, you did 1 or 2 haircuts. That happens to every single person in this industry. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we see, I imagine everybody sees in this industry, that's hard. That psychological, just to process that and handle that and to keep thinking big picture is really hard to do when you're having a slow day or a slow week. And you're going to have more of that when you're starting out than you are 7 years deep, 9 years deep. So I think understanding the process and being dedicated to that big picture, I always kind of feel like the dedication is the light at the end of the tunnel. You're focused on that. And the resilience part comes where everything along the way to that tunnel, any speed bump, any hardship, any slow day, any mellow week, any difficult situation, doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, your eye is on that big picture, on the dedication to it all. So the resilience really comes in day by day. What can I do to improve my setting, my situation right here, right now? It might not always be, I got 9 clients today, I got a nice busy day, just like that. It doesn't happen. How can you get yourself out there, even if it is just being out front of the barber shop, talking to the people going by, just letting everybody know that, hey, this is who we are, this is the energy that we bring. You don't know if that person's going to come around later. Obviously when you're out in the real world talking about it, being about it, just whatever you can do to imprint on people. Again, they might not be sitting in your chair the next day, but, the more you interact with those people, they might come later down the road and be able to do that. And then, when you're having those mellow days, what are you doing in the shop? Are you sitting on your chair just waiting for the walk-in? That's kind of the most minimal thing you could be doing, you could always do advertisement, you could always do social media stuff, you can always become relevant there, but, what else are you doing? So dedication and resilience has always been something that has stuck with me, 7 years deep in this, that you have to have that. And I think on the individual level, one of the key word that I've always felt is the word desire. It doesn't matter if you're day 1, year 3, year 7, year 10, if you don't have that desire for yourself to do what it takes and to get yourself through it, no one's going to do it for you. No one can do it for you. We're as a team environment, we're as a group, we have a brand behind us, but at the end of the day, if you don't want to do it, and if you don't have that desire to put in work to build that clientele and to build that resilience and to be committed to that dedication, you're not going to be here 9 years deep or 7 years deep.
Well, it's hard enough when you enjoy the process. So if you don't have that desire and that joy that it brings you, then it's going to be not a very fun time, in my opinion. So,
if you don't have that joy or desire, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah. No, seriously.
I feel like Sean would have an interesting take here because you've been, in the industry 3 years?
2.5, yeah. Going on my 3rd year.
Going on your 3rd. So what are some things that you are doing now to prepare yourself to have a career decades long within the industry, if that's what you choose to do?
I think it's really just trying to fine-tune the process of bringing it in that consistency every day, and just like you said, you got to fall in love with the process. It's not easy, and I can tell just trying to get that 1% better every day, keep going, and I think just setting small goals to make that long goal come true. I think it's a lot easier to, once you hit that small goal, it's like, okay, you get a little bit of runway. You're like, okay, I'm building up some momentum. Like, let's get this goal.
Well, one thing that kind of stuck with me with that is, which we learned, at least I learned within my first 3 months here with one of our educators, is, be an apprentice for life, be a student for life, basically.
Yeah.
And, to the craft specifically, always be the student, always be the apprentice. One term that you hear a lot in this industry that I know we, kind of poke fun at and don't love is, the master barber kind of mark on it.
Like the title?
The title, yeah, that's a better word. I'm all for people putting in time and effort, and, it sounds good, and, you feel like you're at the top of it all. But at the end of the day, for me, if you're calling yourself a master at anything, subconsciously, you're kind of telling yourself that I know everything. Like, I know it all. And it's more complicated than that. But, being a master, you really are the best of the best. And you can be a teacher, and you can keep on improving and growing. But I feel like that master title, it doesn't open up the door for new knowledge, open-mindedness of being a student for everything. And I'm a big believer that this is one of the most well-rounded crafts out there. So, it's not just being a student for, cutting hair and, talking to people and giving them a service. It's be a student for life is the best way to really enhance your barber career. I think it hits on the creative note. It hits on, which I think is one of the most important things as human beings here on this planet, is to be creative and to actually put your perspective out there in the world. But that is also through your communication that you're doing with your clients, the service that you're giving them. That could be physically, that could be the communication, that could be the emotional support that you're giving them. Your energy is a big freaking deal. It's you can feel that whether you admit it or not. That's a big part of your service as well. Are you improving on the technical skills? Are you improving on all of these things? learning how to be a better listener, learning how to be more open-minded with everybody that you're talking to, because you're just dealing with all walks of life that have different family dynamics, different beliefs, different things that are going on in their world. And at the end of the day, you're there to enhance every aspect of their life that you can. So I really think this is one of the most well-rounded crafts you could possibly be in. So you need to be a student always. It doesn't matter if you're 20 years deep. It doesn't matter if you're 80 years old. You're going to have the chance to learn something new if you're open to that. So, going to that master title, I don't love that when you are 10, 20 years deep. It's just like there's no need for that. Your skill and your craft and who your brand speaks for itself of quality. But just keep on being open, keep on trying to improve every single day, every single week. Doesn't matter if you're in school just starting out, 2.5 years deep, or anything after that. You need to be very open to keep on improving and keep on improving. And if you have that mentality for your life, sky's the limit. That's what that growth mentality is all about, is just improving it. I know there's a saying that all three of us have talked about that we really like, and we can break it down to a little bit more, but I think it all boils down to discipline equals freedom. At the end of the day, your more conscious, high-quality effort accomplishes a more efficient, higher quality whatever you're doing. When you guys hear that kind of saying, discipline equals freedom with your personal life, and obviously with the barber industry, where does your head kind of go on that?
I think discipline's very hard. I think it's a learned practice for sure. But once you can learn how to be disciplined in any aspect of life, it's the root of all things. So anything you're trying to do, you become disciplined in it, you're gonna find some sort of success or freedom. But it's a never-ending process of continuing to do that. It's not like, once I learn how to be disciplined, it's like everything's gonna be fine. It's like you gotta keep going each and every day. You gotta not be afraid to do it. Can't be afraid of failure. And you just gotta embrace it, and you gotta do it every day, and then eventually you'll start to see those positive outcomes.
It's kind of the dedication to the kind of foresight that you're really gonna see the rewards down the road more, but you have to be putting in the work today. Kind of that dedication to the process. It's multiple steps on that.
It's all those small steps in the dark that nobody sees. And then they're going to be like, oh, that dude's super disciplined. He has all these things that I want. I wish I had his life, but nobody sees that process.
Yeah.
They all just want the result.
Yeah. And especially nowadays with social media, it's hard to see everybody out there and their success that they're putting out there. And it's just oh, well, how did they get there? Did they get handed this or something? But it's very easy to forget that
the work that got put in to create that. Well, it's kind of one where, obviously social media is a very one-way lens to see life through, which, we're all a part of it to some level. And, of course, people are putting out their success stories. Not a lot of people are doing the everyday, mundane, mediocre stuff.
Yeah, you don't get full transparency in this world.
No, you see the unfortunate, attention seeking of the victim for sure, but you don't see the mediocre sides of their life, which is just it's a lot of life. But a lot of the people that you are seeing that are successful at any craft, any industry, any business, any aspect of life, I always kind of think about too is, are you thinking about how long they've been doing it? Because when I see somebody that's, say having the life that I'm working towards, or I respect how their character, more often than not, they're significantly older than I am. They're not in their 20s. There's some impressive people in their 20s that I can learn from, and I like their character and where they're headed. And there's a lot of people in their 20s that have had immaculate success, if that's what you're going for. But a lot of the people that I do look up to, they've put in decades in this world more than I have. And I think that's something that we always forget about, is how much time the more seniored person in your industry has actually put in that you just haven't done yet. And there's no way around that. You can't fake that time. You can't falsify all of that. So that's always been a big one. for me that I've paid attention to. With the word discipline, I think we always hear it. I think some people may have a negative connotation towards that word sometimes. Depends on maybe how they were raised or what that means. You're in trouble and you're getting disciplined by your parents. I think that's where a lot of heads sometimes goes to. I know that's not necessarily where my mind goes to, but a simpler way, or more detailed, a little bit more context on that word discipline.
Like self-discipline.
Yeah,
Like,
personal discipline.
yeah.
On it all is I like thinking when you hear the word discipline. There's an old saying, for every one thing that you learn, know 50 things about that thing. So if you're learning one skill, you should know ultimately 50 things that create up that skill. Like it's that an extra layer that it's way more complex and there's way more context in that thing to actually just achieve that skill. And that's where I've always gone with discipline is learn those 50 things of whatever you're trying to achieve better. There's a lot that you can be doing to improve that discipline. How about yourself? When you hear discipline equals freedom, what do you think?
Well, I mean, so two things kind of come to mind. And another one is a quote, and it's just learn the rules so you can break them like an artist. But also, when you build the foundations of discipline, I feel like your life simultaneously gets easier and a little bit harder because you continually are holding yourself to a higher standard, and that bar continually moves. And it's just doing those small practices every day. Keep moving that bar because now you know what you have to do and you know you can do it. So you just can't be a pussy and go get it done.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're doing more, but you have more experience and more knowledge to accomplish it. But your load doesn't get less or lighter. That backpack of weight, whatever responsibilities you put upon yourself, that backpack technically only gets heavier because you're doing more.
But you get stronger.
You're getting stronger, whether that is physically or mentally on the whole matter. But it is kind of one of those where just because you're creating that more discipline, you're definitely not doing less. You don't meet those people they have this disciplined lifestyle and they're still acting and feeling like they have this discipline and they're sitting on the couch and being unhealthy and doing what they weren't doing before. It's like you just keep on building on top of each other with it all.
Yep.
And I always think, because it ties to everything, is it's your daily habits. It's what you're doing every single day is going to make any skill, any thought process, anything that you're doing always is going to tie back to your daily habits. And I think that's the simplest but best way to understand, like, how do you improve? How do you have that growth mentality? Is every little thing that you're doing, do it better today than you did yesterday.
Oh, man, I've known you well enough, or long enough and well enough over the years. I can probably tell you that we look up to some of the same individuals, and it's years of compounding just positive daily movements for decades to get to where you want to go. And on the the other side of the coin, if you're compounding daily just inactivity decades down the road, I can promise you're not going to be where you want to be because you did nothing.
Man, I feel like it's going to be harder to get on that path that you want to if you continue to do the same things in a negative way every single day. It gets easier to just do those things as are normal, and then once you do try to flip the script, you got a bigger hill to climb.
Yeah.
Sean, to you specifically, you got a couple like years, not necessarily in the industry, but like in life on me. From I don't know, say 18 on. When did you kind of start realizing having that growth mentality and improving kind of those, say daily habits or just improving yourself started, and how did that ultimately get you to say because I know what you were doing before. How did it get you to do a completely different, skill, completely different craft, completely different state, a completely different, let's say, life, if you will?
I think just being stuck in a rut for so long of maybe no growth or little growth at all, I feel like kind of, like you said, just compounded everything. And then one day, I was kind of a late bloomer. Like, it took me till I was about 26 to kind of realize, like, wow, I am not happy with what I'm doing. Don't want to continue this. And it kind of just all came to a head eventually, and kind of just my life imploded in a moment, like more like mentally and internally. Like, okay, like, kind of just woke up one day. I went through a hard breakup, and it's just like I woke up one day and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I just had 8 years of just kind of basically just fucking off, and it kind of just came to this realization that I'm like, I need to change things. Like, I need to change a lot. And like you said, I basically hit the reset button at 26, 27. It was like, I need to change who I hang around. I need to change what I'm doing in my free time. I need to just change my whole environment. So yeah, I moved states, moved careers, and it's been hard because I came from an industry where you show up, you make a wage, you can literally do nothing all day. Like, you basically got to show up. Like, obviously you try to work hard, and you make really good money. So then switching into a different industry and a different lifestyle where money isn't guaranteed, and if you don't have those habits, which I didn't at 26, 27, it's like, it's a big slap in the face, and it makes you want to just instill those, like, habits, find some discipline. I'm still working at it every day, but I think sometimes you get that scary realization in life that you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I need to switch things up. And then once you go on that road, it's just, like you said, trying to get better every day, try new things, take those little small goals, get them, hit another goal, make bigger goals, and just keep running with that. But it's like I said, when you have all this negative, it's harder to climb, but just got to stick with it.
Well, and also, though, too, multiple points there. In your mind, 26 might be, pretty late. But, I'd argue, no, a lot more people don't have that realization till much, much later in their life. I mean, you're seeing people in their 40s and 50s, I always call it like the midlife crisis, if you will. Life's complicated, but it is one where I think you do eventually grow up and realize that, like, this is all on me, and you kind of get out of that victim mentality and you kind of shift it to the growth mentality. I would argue, 26 at the end of the day, I'm super pumped that you did learn it that young. There are so many more people that probably do learn a lot later. It shows for yourself, looking in hindsight, you wish you would have maybe figured that out, earlier, which I think tells a lot to your mental fortitude and where you're going. You do care that much. But I think it's one, too, where even if you do learn at 26, you learn it later, we're probably going to have another layer to that later down the road where, like, God, I got to do even more. Like, I'm selling myself short at 42. Like, what am I doing? So I think it opens up of it's okay to have it at whatever, it's going to happen at whatever age it's supposed to happen with you, and it's probably going to happen more than once. And, one big thing that stuck out to me when you were saying that, and, I don't want to throw the T word at you, if you will, but when you're going through a big, say, heartbreak like that, and I don't want to put, like, all the emphasis on that, but when you're going through something big, where kind of just your whole life gets punched in the face, everything from that moment on, there's a 180, it's a checkpoint in your life, and it's usually through something difficult, hard, traumatic, bad. It seems to be those type of things that significantly shift your mindset. So I think it shows to almost the importance of going through the hardship or going through hard things. Is if you never go through hard stuff, a strong, resilient person with, great parents, good mentors, a great interest in growth, like, you can always keep on compounding and improving. But that's not most people. Most people don't have that discipline instilled in them as a little kid and can continue to carry that on for the rest of their life. That's a pretty big ask, and it's probably very, very few people. But for the rest of us and for normal people, going through something pretty big, bad, it kind of is that big wake-up call or that big shift in mindset that if it didn't happen, you might not have had that, like, exponential growth like you did, if you will, mentally.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of, the silver lining is, there's a lot of beauty in that hardship and that difficult thing you go through. Because at the end of the day, the harder you fall, the higher you're going to be able to pick yourself back up again. That pendulum absolutely swings, admit it or not. But those hardships, I think, are probably the biggest thing to give you that biggest shift in, say, your life. John, with you, it was kind of same question. How was your mindset growing up? Was there a certain moment that there was like a more conscious shift to it all? How did you kind of get here mentally?
So, I mean, I really started working at 15, and it was something I wanted to do, which kind of really instilled that discipline early on, but kind of dabble with it growing up, especially working dead-end jobs, trying to figure out what you want to do. And I really didn't start stepping on the gas really until 2 years ago. Found out I was going to be a dad, and it was like, it's go time. Like, we're done fucking around. It's time to figure it out and just step on it. That's really what started it. And now we're shaking it up again, moving across the world and realizing what you do need to actually do to do it, and realizing that if you just take those little small decisions every day to get you closer to your goal, it comes a whole lot faster than you think it's actually going to come.
I remember, you and I went out to the Netherlands.
2019.
So we're pushing it on for almost 5 years ago. And I even feel like then, having conversations with you, mentioned of, I'd like to live out here. I think at one point I want to do this, we want to do this. It was an interest. Do you feel, before these 2 years, before you, became a dad, before you knew you were going to be a dad, if you did make that big of a jump, life, personally, family-wise, and obviously career-wise also, do you feel like you were mentally strong enough to make this big of a jump 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Nope. Because Allie and I, we still look at each other probably daily and just start laughing. Because I'm like, I never thought I'd have the balls to actually go for it. But it's just, it felt right. And after Rosie was born, it took maybe 6 weeks of her being here, and we looked at each other and we're like, it's time. It's time to make that change. But before she was here, I probably wouldn't have pulled the trigger on it. Always would have fantasized about it and then lived with the what ifs.
Well, I'm glad you're making the big swings and not living with the what ifs.
Yeah, that shit will eat you alive.
I feel like that's like the other end of the spectrum. We were just talking about, like, a traumatic or rough experience can cause you to kind of change what's going on, but also something like a huge life event like that, like having a child.
Oh, it's beautiful, but don't get it wrong. It's rough.
Yeah,
but it's tough,
it's
man.
It's traumatic and beautiful.
But it can spin that wheel a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
It kind of ruffles the feathers of things going on, and it kind of changes your perspective on things. I can imagine. I don't have a kid, but I know from people that do, I know that it changes your life.
Yeah, it's about as big as it comes.
Possible.
Yeah, it's about those big things
Yeah.
are going to make those big changes. And yeah, absolutely. Being a parent, having a kid, it doesn't get much bigger than that. You can go through a lot of things, but when you now have a little person that is
like
now
they're
number
dependent
one,
on you.
Yeah. Like, is now your number one, and like you are now number two. Like it's that most simple way I can think of it is you're no longer number one in your life.
Yeah.
Like when you're going through just normal day by day, even if you're a very open-minded, loving person, you're still living through your own perspective. Like you're still selfish to some degree because you're playing your own life. But when you do have a kid, you're now the second player. There's now number one player, you're number two, and that mind shift is, I don't think you can replicate it any other way. But it's big. It definitely makes those big changes.
Do you think it makes it easier to be disciplined when you have another life depending on you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for
Maybe
us,
not, I don't know if easier is the right word.
Yeah.
More meaningful.
yes, but it's also one of those things too. Is like, I think all of us know some not amazing parents, and I think it's more complicated than just like, yep, if you have a kid, you're gonna understand it and it's gonna be easier. The joke is it's kind of like money. The more money you have, basically just brings out who you already were. If you're a shitty person with a lot of money, you're gonna do shitty things with that money. If you're a shitty person and you get a kid, you're at least starting out as a shitty parent. You could grow on it and you can improve if you really, really care. But it's being a parent is very hard. I don't want to take that away from that. But there's definitely a lot of shitty parents out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I would argue they're shitty people. And unfortunately, the luck of the draw, and if you happen to be one of those kids with shitty parents, that's your parents. Like, there's not a dang thing you can do to change that or to stop that. But I will say, if you have that growth mindset or you have that stronger mentality, or just of an improvement. Like, at the end of the day, reality is you are wherever you are. It's not a good or bad thing. You are who you are based on your circumstances and your decisions. But when you do become a parent and you have that kind of growth mentality, that's when I would say it gets easier to understand the discipline, because you already had that, but now it just kind of, you put some steroids in it, and now you're really having to make those decisions. You can't just like put it off because I'm kind of tired today. Like, well, my kid's there and he's sick or unhappy or things are going on, and you got to do it. So if you do have that discipline spark in you and you're improving on that, I would definitely say being a parent is one of the biggest beautiful things to keep on improving, say, on that discipline. I know for myself, I think spoiled and lucky to be able to say, my discipline started about as early as you could imagine. I definitely grew up in a lot of structure, a lot of rules, a lot of discipline, but I also have really caring, genuine parents. So it's people that talk the talk but absolutely walk the walk. Now, it wasn't always the funnest as a kid, but in hindsight, I'm lucky to have that childhood that I did have. I remember, my whole life, living on an acre of land, huge yard, big garden, and it was a lot of work, and it wasn't, here's your allowance for helping out the families. It's like, well, you got to do your work if you want to go play and go do your thing. It's like you had all these expectations before you could do what you wanted to do. Kind of that philosophy or mindset of, you do what you need to do before you do the things that you want to do. That was my whole childhood. I had no choice. You toss in religion, you toss in just disciplined parents that absolutely walked the walk as well. So you saw your parents living to those same standards. But I remember, 10 years old, starting mowing other people's lawns and doing that. And, the cool thing about our situation is, so my dad owned, as a side business, a lawn care company, but all of us boys ran it, and I'm the youngest out of 4 boys. So even my older brothers, even longer, doing a lot more. I was the little brother tagging along, but it was one of those where, when you're mowing, say, 15 lawns a week, and they're not like your neighbors, they're, in different cities and different places, you're loading up a truck and you're doing it as like a business would do it. It creates a lot of work ethic, creates a lot of discipline for that. And that was mandatory. And then you were able to kind of, do what you wanted to do. So I got spoiled to like have that environment at such a young age. And like I said, I was doing that 10, 11 years old, as a business, which was nice, have cash on like as a kid. And my parents kind of helped us, how to spend money, how to save money, and go through that. And then, as I got older, got a lot more into competitive baseball, and that was definitely my life. So I'll be honest, I'm very spoiled of being the youngest kid, because I was able to, and being obsessed with baseball, and, had a good life that way. So I just got busier as well. So, but that became my next discipline. It was all about, baseball and improving that, and just keep on, getting higher skills that way. And then, I always joke is, everybody rebels to some degree as a teenager, if you will, depending on your parents. And, when you got as strict as parents as I do, you definitely rebelled. And I had 3 older brothers that did the same, so I definitely was bred on confidence in the rebellious world. And, also with confidence, though, that was like the number one thing my dad would just instill in all of his boys. It was just confidence, confidence, confidence. He wanted you to be competent of everything that you're doing. He wanted you to have that confident mindset wherever you're at, whether it's in baseball, at school, in life. Like, he just, forced that down your throat to really believe in yourself. So, again, lucky to, have that type of environment my whole life. And then, but it was always funny when, when your friends or other people would get in trouble, people get grounded for a little bit. They get things taken away. Having a judge as a dad, that is not how my, say, discipline would go if I get in trouble. We'd basically go on like 6-month probations. You're signing a contract where you're kind of not giving your life up, but you're kind of giving your life up. You're getting all these things taken away. But at the end of the day, if you wanted to get some things back, whether it's your car, drive-in, hanging out with friends, getting your phone back, getting your life back, you had to do X, Y, or Z. And there was 30 different things that you could do to basically lessen your probation to get things back sooner. But the whole mindset and the whole philosophy was to teach you, okay, you get the agency to choose your life. You get to make all the choices in your world, but you don't get to choose the consequences in this world. And when you make decisions and consequences are made, it happens. But at the same time, if you're constantly doing extra stuff to improve and to grow, those consequences get less and less and less. So it really taught all of us to keep on putting in more effort. Even when you get kicked down and you're kind of in an F this mentality, you're able to be like, all right, whatever. I can do this to improve this situation. I can do this to improve this situation. I can do this to improve this situation. So I had best case scenario of an environment growing up to learn discipline and to learn that growth mentality. And then, when I was in high school, I had kind of the big, not so fun, traumatic situation that really shook my life up, and I had to become an adult a lot faster than I was planning on it, and a lot faster than my parents wanted me to. But it shaped me in a way of like, what? I made the decision. I have this consequence I got to live with, but now what am I going to do to improve that situation? So I started improving that, my senior year in high school, and so kept on growing and growing and kind of going through the pain that I was going through, but improving on it. And then, within 2 years, ultimately decided to be a dad. And, that was another, kind of big move. And, that was an easy decision and, love it more than anything. But it's big, it was another one of those things where it's just like, all right, keep on improving. You got to keep on, doing more. Keep on putting, more strength on your back so you can hold more, responsibilities on your back. And then ultimately, at 20, decided to get into this craft, and the kind of same idea. I wanted to be working for myself as much as possible. I always had that fantasy of being a businessman when I was a kid. So like this was kind of my entry level to like, all right, I'm kind of like doing this for myself. There's no guarantee. Like you don't get money just by showing up. Like you got to create it. If you're not putting hair, if you're not putting hair on the floor, you're not making money. I got again supernaturally blessed to find this place. 30 days within being in school, and just keep on building, and with all of the training and all the education, all the expectations here. It is just, I was, made for a system like this. Like, this is what my whole life has been like, is all about that growth, all about that discipline. So I feel very lucky to have that, like, my whole life, and have an environment where it's kind of been not forcing me to do it, but kind of forcing me to, have this mentality. Then you toss in some negative, big situations that really shook up my mindset and really had to improve. And then you toss in some big, beautiful, hard things to kind of go through as well to ultimately get where we're at today.
Heard.
Back to that 7 years.
Any closing thoughts?
No, it was great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
I like all of us being here.
Yeah.
I like doing stuff like this.
Well, I think it's good too. Like, I didn't talk a lot today, but it's just, obviously I've been around you guys for a minute, but obviously I've only been in the industry 2 going on 3 years, so.
This is like the only second shift like we've worked together, dude.
Yeah, I know, but like, just like, obviously I've heard these things, but for me it's just soaking in the information, and I got a lot to work on, and we all do, but just trying to make it in this industry, it's nice to be able to see people do good at it and be successful at it. So it's like, okay, like they put in the work. It's a slow burn, like you said, and as long as I just stick to kind of the same things these guys are doing, like I'm gonna be just fine too. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a great mindset to have and good to recognize that. And yeah, I think it's a big deal to know in any aspect of life, somebody that's been in your shoes before or is a little bit further along on that timeline is to have that mentor, have that discussion with them. Is they've been where I've been. I think that's something that we oftentimes forget about. Especially being on the younger. We're all still really young, but it's like being on the younger side of any industry or any skill set. You're at the beginning. There's no way around that. Like it is what it is.
And you got to remind yourself of that too. It's just like, okay, like this is gonna be a slow burn. Like, yeah, keep that end goal in mind, but you just gotta buckle in for the ride because it's gonna be a roller coaster at times. So yeah, it's just like if whoever's listening, it's just like, oh, I want to be like those guys. Like I'm looking at it right now, soaking in all the information I'm hearing from you guys. So like we're all on the journey together. We're just at different paths on it. So
yeah, and we're doing that to other people as well.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, we can absolutely learn stuff from you all day, every day. But it's like we're also looking to people that are either in this industry, 15, 20 years deep in this, or in other industries that are 15, 20, 30 years deep in their life. You're going to be learning from the people that have been in your shoes that are just a little bit further on that timeline. And it's a good thing, and it's reality. You kind of accept where you're at and just keep having that compound effect, just improving your daily habits, and every little thing just keeps building on top of each other, And at the end of the day, that's the secret sauce. Though that's the formula right there. And there's no way of you can't fake the timeline. That's something that you do have to go through. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But having that mindset to just keep on growing, keep on improving, do more, but you're going to be stronger and have more experience and more knowledge to accomplish it. I wouldn't say with ease, but like with more ease and with more strength and more resilience to go through it. But at the end of the day, you're going to be, picking up more bricks. You're going to be doing more tomorrow than you were today. Love it.
Embrace
Word.
it.
Well, guys,
Yep.
thanks for being here. Casey, thanks
you.
as always for showing up nice and early for us. And everybody, thanks for listening to another City Barbers podcast.
Heard, Chef.